All right, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. So I believe this will be your final stop. You have seen the campus already, also get some information. I want to share just more insight and thoughts with you just before you have to say goodbye to the campus. Let me just say a little bit more about myself. I'm Jackie. I'm one of the teaching faculty in the EECS department. I mainly teach computer science and software engineering courses. I used to teach quite many first year courses, but these days, I just teach second and third year. So if you do end up studying here, very likely you will see me at some point. I did my bachelor at York, and then after that, I went off to abroad to actually do my PhD study. Actually, Lassonde was not even founded when I first started my degree here back in 2002. So I think the resources and also infrastructure have been expanded quite substantially. So I think it's definitely more and more support provided to students. And then I did my postdoc in McMaster and Ontario Power Generation, doing a little bit like a safety critical nuclear domain kind of research. I'm more like an academic person throughout my career path. And then I went to this university called Stony Brook, based on New York, and they have an international campus in South Korea. I also went there to teach for 2 years, undergrad program there. And then I came back home and settled down. So that's kind of the path I have. So I would say, to be fair, from a personal perspective, I think York has been a very good, built a very good foundation on myself to really succeed in my career. But I want to say a little bit more. Okay. So what kind of experience can you expect in Lassonde? I think that will be very important. Just to start with, it would be to really build the foundation pipeline. So we got standard lectures, tutorials. I would say today is a little bit more like a mini lecture. So William Small Center is actually one of the main labs we have to host our students doing experiential exercises. I think I actually use this lab space, especially the rooms behind you, 105, 106, 108, also more often. To really let students do some demo to students. They also stay here for computer-based tests as well. So we have to make sure we can assess students' ability to also build programs from scratch. So you can see there's a pipeline here. So in our first year, CS or engineering, we teach them object-oriented programming like a Java. If you know Java already or Python, similar. And then in the second year, we start teaching them about data structure, third year algorithm, and in the more senior year, about how you can do design and specification for software. I think especially for the later part, it's definitely getting more and more relevant to the kind of challenges you have to deal with, especially given AI. Well, I'll elaborate a little bit more details. And then learn by doing, right? We definitely emphasize experiential learning. So you will be given lots of projects, labs, and also assessment, throughout your curriculum, your degree, to really constantly receive feedback about where you are and how you can really keep improving. And you're gonna practice all sorts of skills. I would say technical skill for sure, and also the middle bullet point, the reasoning. I think that's especially important. It's not just about reasoning according to some template. You want to be creative. You want to be able to solve novel problems, and also communication. Doing presentation like what I'm doing here, and also to express ideas about complicated ideas on your own. That's also very important, I think. Right, and then you get lots of support. You got office hour by your professor, by the TA. You got mentorship. I think that's really the one I want to emphasize even more later. I think getting a mentor from the school is definitely important for your future success. They can give you lots of advices, and also your fellow student and the community in general. Right, so rather than just keep sharing just thoughts, I want to give you one example demo about what university lecture could be like. Just some idea, right? Of course, I have my style. My colleagues got their own style, but similar. We want to challenge you intellectually. I have chosen some very simple example about calculating BMI. Right? So maybe you have heard about the idea. I'll remind you about the formula. But this is really some abstract reasoning pattern that can be applicable to other domains as well. Medical, nuclear, safety critical, mission critical, right? You name it. Let's now focus on just this page right here. Okay, I'll walk you through. Let's say we're trying to calculate the BMI for a person, right? We're going to create, multiple person objects at the end. So let's say that we have a template called person. We got weight, we got heights, kilograms, and also meters. And then we can create a new person passing their weights and heights. And we can calculate a person's BMI and the formula we're going to use. So the BMI would just be the height divided by the square. Oh, let me say it again. Sorry. The weight divided by the square of the heights. Right? Simple formula. Okay, we're going to see how this formula can actually work in programming. And also, we allow a person to actually increase on their weights, which is also normal. Okay, so that's kind of the setup. Let's now consider one fragment of program here. I explain to you the critical parts, and then I will see if you can answer some question from me. Okay, it's okay to be not exactly right for the first time. Okay, let's look at what we have now. So we have two objects here. We got Alan, and also we got Tom over here, right? And the reasoning pattern I like to show to my student is you have to be able to visualize and abstract away all the programming detail. Let's just visualize what's happening here. So what I have is I have the first person, which will be Alan. So Alan will be a person with 72 and 1.72. So 72 and also 1.72. The second person will be Tom. So I got Tom over here. And then I got the weights and heights, 65 and also 1.81. Right? Very straightforward so far. And then later on, I'm just going to calculate the BMI for Alan and the BMI for Tom, right? I'm going to just use these numbers to calculate. Nothing special, right? So far, it's very straightforward. I'm going to get some numbers from here, another number from here. Let me just say number 1 and number 2. The exact number is not really important. This will be BMI number 1. This will be another BMI. So BMI number 2, okay? And then I have just one more line. Alan equals Tom. For those of you who know Java, you might know exactly what this line means. If you know, that's okay. Let's pretend. There's got to be a line over here, which is going to do something magical behind the scene. And then I say, now I want to let Alan gain weight by 3. Let's think logically, right? According to the formula, the weight is right here. If the weight goes up, I should expect BMI to go up, logically. So now here's my question to you. Let's say I try to recalculate the BMI for Alan and Tom. If I compare this number here against the original BMI 1, and also I calculate this number and compare that against the BMI 2, what kind of change should I expect to see? For example, so here, Alan that get BMI after gaining 3 kilograms. Should I expect from here to here, should it be increasing, decreasing, or no change?
It sort of depends because, like, in the second chunk of code, that's
yeah.
using BMI2 as
Mm-hmm.
a reference for
Yeah, you're kind of on the right track, yes. So you're more saying that line number 9 may have some impact over here, right?
Yeah, so like
Mm-hmm.
line number, what is that, 8?
Yep.
Basically, we can tell that 13 would be higher than 8, but
Yep.
we don't have any information without actually running get BMI
Yep.
about whether it'll be higher in line 6 or line 13.
Yeah, absolutely. I think line number 9, I can tell you, is definitely the critical line to really pay attention to. But let's make it more precise, right? So roughly speaking, if we compare this and this and this and this, intuitively, we think one way. But when we actually run a program, it may not be the other way. Okay, so let's now take a quick look. We're scientists, we're engineer. So what I would do is we'll try to go directly to a program. So this is just like a programming IDE, integrated development environments. For Java, this is very standard called Eclipse. You program in Python, C#, you got other tools like Visual Studio, IntelliJ, etc. Right? I input the exact program right here. I just want to see what the outputs are. Right? You can see right here is run. Right? So now if I see, okay, after gaining 3 kilograms, Alan BMI go from 24 down to 20. And then we got only Alan seem to be gaining the weights, but Tom actually BMI will change from 19 to 20. That's the reality. All right. So up to now, it doesn't seem to be intuitive for many of the students usually. So what we need to see now is see how to reason about this. I'll show you very quickly, just 1 minute. Okay. So what we should do is we should really study about exactly what line number 9 over there is really saying, line number 9. This one is saying we're going to copy the address stored in Tom into Alan. That's a little bit technical, but diagrammatically, we're going to say that Alan is going to change. rather than pointing to here, it's going to point to wherever Tom is pointing to. So after this line, Alan and Tom, they will point to the same objects. So now when you calculate the BMI for either Alan or Tom, you're really calculating for the same objects based on these two numbers. So that's why you will see that these two numbers are just the same, right? That's a very quick illustration about how you should really analyze the program behavior. Once you get to the more senior level, definitely the program will get more and more complicated, right? That's just one example. Okay. Any questions just about this particular example? Any thoughts? Okay, good. Yeah. This is what I usually show to my student either in the first year, the first Java course, or second year when I get to the like a recap for the second year Java course. Okay. But of course, once you get to the more senior year, you will see more complicated example. Let me wrap it up in 2 minutes. Right, so AI, really, everybody's talking about using ChatGPT. It might be replacing so many jobs. The fact is, yes, AI does automate many routine tasks, for sure. On the other hand, we should also be aware AI can also do something that's not so pleasant. People say AI can, it's really statistical. It can hallucinate or it can fabricate. Basically, anything that doesn't really exist in the context information, AI can make it up and make it sound so convincing. So for you, as an engineer or scientist, you're not supposed to be deceived by AI, right? That's something you are supposed to have the foundation to really judge and really give the correct interpretation by yourself. So that's why we will argue the opportunity now is actually even better if you actually got a very solid foundation. The future job will always need people who can rigorously evaluate and also systematically craft the software artifacts. So that's really something we think you can learn from the proper curriculum. All right, so we just want to make sure you can leverage the AI or any future tool because tool or trend can change all the time. But we want to make sure foundation is there so you can always exploit foundation to really use it for anything that's necessary. All right, so the next wave could be AI, could be something else, but we believe the safest bet will be just to have solid foundation, proficient skill, and resilience as well. We want also students to really learn how to fail sometimes, and also once you fail, how can you really grow up and also learn and grow stronger and come back stronger, basically. And school is really the best environment to, fail safely. All right, finally, just about, mentoring here. I think especially for mentoring, I personally benefit a lot from human mentoring. So my old professor who already retired, without him introducing to me the research opportunity or reference letter, etc., I definitely wouldn't be able to get all the good job perspective I have right now. So I think mentoring is definitely important. So if you're stay on campus for 4 years, whenever you really feel that the professor you're taking a course with, they might have some shared research interest. You should really reach out to them and also get connected. They will be able to give you many advices to really help you, right? I think that's really non-replaceable by anything else. Connections, right? TA, not just professor, other people as well. Opportunities, right? So this might be maybe you're kind of curious about. Let's say in the summer when you don't really have to take courses, usually for the fall and winter, you're pretty packed with all the schedule. What about the summer? Different options. You can maybe try to approach your professor. They might have some part-time paid position for you to do research. They may have some voluntary position for you to get involved. Or you can apply for the co-op, which I believe they don't usually have any admission requirement. You can just sign up for the co-op. You just have to somehow find a job yourself, right? And also work through the portal. And also project courses, you can also choose to take some credit course and by doing some project. That can also give you more hands-on experience. All right, finally, what kind of path can you really go after graduation? If you like to go to industry, to be a software developer or other technical position, or if you want to be more like me, you want to stay in the school, you want to do research, you want to teach courses in academia, I would say both paths are very good. We are not necessarily fit for every path, but whatever you choose, I think solid foundation will be so important. I think that will be maybe a factor for you to consider if you want to stay in the school. All right, I can definitely take questions. We have some time. But for those of you who might be interested learning while seeing like what university, like a CS, SE courses are like, you can feel free to go to my lecture site. It's completely public. I record all my lectures ever since I joined York. So I teach us a wide range of courses. You can feel free to go there if you're interested, seeing what learning will be like. Okay, apart from that, I'll take your questions. Thank you so much. Yeah. Questions? Yeah, please, question.
Like, sort of, kind of, like going back to the program, is there like a method that you could use to like instead copy over the data instead of just viewing the same?
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, I love the question. I think the question was, no problem, I'll answer briefly. Yeah. So here, this line here, that's kind of the cheapest way to really copy something, just copy the address. But if you really want to copy maybe data by data over, you will have to implement something, for example, like a copy constructor yourself. That's something you have to define.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, in general, it could be arbitrarily complicated because object structure can also be arbitrarily complicated. But that's something you will get a chance to practice in the actual labs or test.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Which first year courses do students find most challenging?
Fourth year course?
First year.
Oh, first year course. I would say possibly, I think the first programming course, either MATLAB, if you do in engineering, or it could be JavaScript or Python. I think those are meant to be lightweighted to really just get you started. Maybe a second course will be more difficult because that will be the one we try to be a little bit more maintaining the standard. We try to have you take some in-lab programming test, and also the lecture material might be more intensive. That might be the second one. But I would say the big jump will be the second year, which is kind of expected. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good luck. Thank you.